Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, July 21st. It's currently 7 o'clock, and this is our last council meeting of the summer. We'll be back in September. We usually take August off because of holidays. So I would like to call the meeting to order. We have the agenda, but we have some amendments to the agenda to include. Ms. Elrick, do you want to speak to those amendments?
Sure, thank you, Mayor McKeon. We do have an addition to the agenda, which is going to be included as item 9F, and it is an Anmore parking regulation and enforcement bylaw amendment, as well as a municipal ticket information utilization bylaw amendment to accompany it. So the resolution would be that council approve the agenda as amended to include the addition of item 9F, Anmore parking regulation and enforcement bylaw amendment, and municipal ticket information utilization bylaw amendment. The proposed bylaws were distributed on table to council and will be attached to the minutes of this meeting and are available for the members of the public here tonight as well.
And this is in direct relation to some of the issues that we've been having at the lake over recent weeks with the weather getting better and that. So it's directly related to that. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now open up to public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on any items shown on this meeting agenda. A 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Is anybody wanting to say anything at public input? Okay, we'll move on to delegations. We have Superintendent Annette Fellner, Officer in Command of the Coquitlam RCMP, to provide policing update and 2019 statistics. And we're sad to say that this will be her last public meeting, I guess, because she's moving on to the head office. So welcome, Annette.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. So as noted, I will be providing a bit of an overview of some of the policing stats for Anmore in 2019. On the next slide, I will get used to the next slide piece. On the first slide, you'll see the comparison between 2018 and 2019, where the files have been pretty consistent year over year. The most frequently reported crime types are noted in similar fashion as previous years. One thing we did want to bring forward, if there's other crime types that you guys wish to see, just to please let us know and we can include those on future reports. So our suspicious persons and vehicle occurrence files, where you'll see there's been an increase in this category. It's somewhat of a catch-all for us. So we reviewed the 31 files to kind of see what was going on with that, and some of the examples of what we were seeing in there. We had a suspicious vehicle that was left at Bunsen Lake for several days, but it was determined the homeowner was in New West, safe and sound. There was a new resident in Anmore who they thought to be stealing mail, but he was just trying to figure out which mailbox was his. And another one, there was a pet company out here looking for a lost pet and was reported as a suspicious person. So for us to be able to narrow down and pinpoint what the reason was for that is difficult, because when we start looking at it, there is a lot that is suspicious, and it's good we're getting those calls, because in a smaller community you're able to detect that and we can come out and check it out. And a lot of times they were checking out to be actual people who belonged in the community or not suspicious. So looking for an uptick was difficult for us in that area, because most of them seem to be unsubstantiated. When you look at the unspecified assistance, it's similar in above, that it's kind of a generic category for us, and the increase in this area likely has a cumulative effect in reductions in other areas, such as a loud argument that previously might have been called an assault. So we did change the way some of the stuff was reporting, so that happened in 2019, and so when we're reporting the crime types, that's where we're seeing an uptick in some of the areas. Our bylaw files included 13 for noise complaints and 7 for other reason. In 2018, 8 were noise complaints and 5 were for other reasons, and the most frequent were noise from Spirit Park. The other reasons range from parking and to dog complaints and kids longboarding, etc. So the traffic files are those involved in an investigation of some sort. In 2019, there were 5 traffic-related complaints and 4 enforcement ticket warnings that were observed by police, but no complaint. This also includes proactive enforcement and 1 accident. There are likely more tickets that were issued and written, but that don't have a file associated. So when we do issue a violation ticket for traffic, there isn't always a file associated, depending what the offense was. Although the numbers were higher in 2018, the ratio remained about the same in terms of complaints versus observed offenses, but there were a couple of additional accidents. The Bunsen Lake numbers are included overall, however, we have a separate slide that we will discuss that as well. Okay, next slide. So the signal crimes are those that are selected based on analysis of prolific offender activity and crime trends from the previous 2 years. Robberies are 0, as the only robbery-related files in the village involve recovered plates from the incidents in other jurisdictions. Signal crimes are the same crimes used in larger centers, but given the smaller size of the villages, the numbers don't transfer well, as the villages don't tend to have a large number of calls of this nature. Next slide. And in 2019, so here we are at Bunsen Lake, there was only a single file specifically related to the Cannabis Act. And in 2018, prior to the new legislation taking effect in the fall, there was one as well. So the new legislation does not seem to have had an effect thus far, as we could see. The Coroner Act, which is the drowning files, in 2018 there were 3, and in 2019 there were 0. We're hopefully being able to attribute to this since some of the signage that was put up in 2018, as well as the education programs that were put out then as well. The total number of files that were generated or dispatched accounted for files as a result of the BC Hydro funded policing initiative. In 2018 it was 41 total files, 22 as a result of BC Hydro funded Bunsen patrols, and 19 at the expense of the village. In 2019 there were 39 total calls, and 18 were a result of the BC Hydro funded Bunsen patrols, and 21 were at the expense of the village. That amounts to an average to close to 50% that are during the Hydro funded patrols, and the numbers appear to be consistent year over year. Next slide, I will open it up if there's any questions.
I just had a couple of comments quickly. I think as well with the drowning, we've been able to secure funding from BC Hydro for a lifeguard this year. So that's hopefully going to work really well. I just a couple comments I had. I just wanted to discuss, there seems to be a bit of a swell right now of content theft, people going into cars in the middle of the night, and I know there's been a bunch of that mentioned on social media, and I know that the police have been following up with that, so that's good. It seems for some reason there's a group of people actively walking through our neighborhood in the early morning hours, and I know me personally last year we had a car there that was unlocked and they went through it and that, so it was a good lesson to make it locked. I just also want to extend a big thank you to the RCMP for their ongoing effort with working with the park rangers, helping with traffic control. The last couple of weekends I've been down there watching it, and they've been a huge asset for the young kids that are trying to keep people out of the park and keep the traffic moving. It is essential because these young kids and park rangers can quite easily get abused. I've seen it before. Having the RCMP there is dramatic difference, and it keeps the traffic flowing, and it keeps it so if there is an emergency, we're able to get the fire department down there, and that, so it's thank you. And the other thing is that we as a council are still waiting to hear back from Transport Canada regarding the old helicopter party that happened a little over a year ago, and I'm still shocked that they have not gotten back to us as to really what is going on. And I know you and I talked about that, and that it was a terrible situation, and thank goodness that we haven't seen another one. So those are my few comments.
And I guess if I could just take an opportunity on the theft from auto, because it is something that we see as an increase through the Tri-Cities as well, and just reminding people, as you said, that locking your doors, because that's a lot when we're looking at the increase that we're seeing in our areas that we're responsible for, is people still leaving valuables in their vehicles, not leaving their vehicles locked, so that little piece does help in keeping those numbers down, but we still do see a high number of people leaving valuables out in sight and not locking their vehicles, and people are going in with the petty change, so just the piece from that. And yeah, with the Transport Canada, I'm not sure and I know with some government departments with COVID, I'm sure that's probably delayed some of their investigational stuff, but I would be not able to speak on that.
Good. Any other questions from council? Councillor Weberink.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I just want to echo Mayor McEwen's comments on the Bunsen Lake issue. I mean, we're 2,500 people here, and when that lake is full and people are parking and walking, it can get a little tense sometimes between neighbors and people parking on streets. I had people racing up and down my street, which is nowhere near the lake, which is how bad it was on Saturday. So it's just good. And I noticed there was an RCMP officer at the fire department, so you guys were close by if it escalated. So I appreciate that, and I know my neighbors do too.
Any other Questions, comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming, and best of luck in your new venture.
Thank you, and I guess the one other piece I will leave, if there is other stuff that you guys would find of interest to be reported on, to just let us know through Staff Sergeant Leeple or Sergeant Flores, and we'll be able to include that in the future.
Perfect.
As well.
Good. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.
Okay, we have minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 7th, 2020. Could I get the recommendation would read?
That the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 7th, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Is there business arising from the minutes? I've got two things. First thing is I would like to put forth, it was in from last week, there was a comment about council moving forward and exploring and getting some public feedback into changing the designation of the Ioko lands from a special study area to possibly to urban. And I was wanting to see if council, if we could get a resolution to engage in a financial analysis to update our Van Struth financial sustainability report. And we could get together and get a terms of reference in regards to what we'd want and that, but I just thought it would be something that we should, it set us up when we did our last official community plan, and it's going on over 6 years, and we are in a good financial situation right now, but it's important that we see what decisions moving forward and how this may have an effect on our long-term sustainability. So, Ms. Halliwell, do we need a resolution for that, or just to pursue an update on the Van Struth financial sustainability?
Through the mayor, yes.
Yep.
It would be appropriate. There would also be funding that would be required, as that's not currently allocated within the
Yeah.
budget. So you could certainly look for staff to obtain a quote and
Put a
come
report
back.
together of things that we would look for and,
Yep.
and what it would cost us?
Absolutely.
Good, okay, so does somebody want to move that resolution? Moved, seconded, I'll open up for discussion.
Yes.
Councillor Wivering?
I guess it's the kind of thing I'd call it almost a living document, the financial plan. It's probably something that we should update regularly. And I'm thinking now that we have the asset management plan, it's probably going to add some valuable information to that plan. And I guess a question would be about that. Would we look at different development scenarios, different futures? Like, would we instruct them to do that? Because it really depends on how we develop, right?
That's what we did in the past.
Okay.
And it was clearly, they did an inventory. It shouldn't be as much, it was really important when we did it last time because the Advisory Planning Commission decided that they could not move forward without understanding the decisions that they were making with land use, the financial burden it was on such a limited tax base. And so they did it, and it was a fairly extensive document. We still reference it quite often. I just thought it'd be good to update it. It shouldn't be nearly as extensive. We already know the inventory of lots and acreages right now. We know that our current financial situation at that point in time when it was done in, I think it was 2013, we were facing about a $9 million infrastructure deficit, and now we have eliminated that, and we're to the good. So it would be interesting to get an update on it and see where we're at, and talk about different, in the ways that we develop out, if that's functional. I know that we've had a few proposals come forward with the hillside, and we've actually through our engineering report said that these things aren't financially viable for that. So it would be a good document to let people know as well moving forward that it would be that we have this and update it. So
Yeah, and sorry if I may, we're not changing our OCP, so they're still
No.
going to go by the same criteria
Yep.
and just a little bit more information.
Yep.
Because I think that $9 million, I would call it deferred projects we couldn't afford to do. That number's probably changed quite a bit as they're all capital projects and construction's gone up. So it'd be good to know that.
Yep.
I think it's a good idea.
okay, Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I think updating our position is just prudent and making sure that we're on top of all of that. I would say, Julie, that we need to be clear to whoever the service provider is that reinventing the wheel is not something we want to do, just to keep a lid on the cost, but only within reason. We need good information.
Good. Okay, seeing no more comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, I have one other point at business arising, and that is I have a resolution to read. I'm going to ask Councillor Trowbridge if he wants to recuse himself.
He does.
Okay. Okay.
Only if I can get out.
I have a resolution to read. We were supposed to have a public hearing this evening on a development, and that has been postponed. And with that, I have a resolution that I will read. That council directs staff to review and analyze the technical concerns raised by a resident in relation to the 1130 Mountain Air Lane rezoning application and whether or not there may be an impact to other development applications, and report back to council. So it's very general, but it's just we have some concerns about some interpretations. Got somebody to move that? Moved. Seconded. I'll open up for discussion. Councillor Weberink?
Sorry, I think Councillor Laidler was.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So, can we give a little bit of sorry. Can we give a little bit of background why this is? Do we feel that maybe we haven't applied rules consistently, or what's the reason for it?
I think at this time it's just been highlighted that there may be different interpretations. I'm not able to confirm that at this
Okay.
time, but that's why we're looking, for council to direct staff to have a look into it.
Okay.
And these reports will be comprised from our planner, third-party planner, our engineer, as well. So,
Okay.
Councillor Laidler.
I had a look at the report and I was concerned, and obviously I thought it was going to be, some of these concerns would be brought up at the public meeting. And some, maybe I don't know the exact rules that have covered it, but for example, are we waiving as well the amount of area that's supposed to be available in the frontage?
We're none of that is being, all we're doing is making sure, because there's a bit of a vagueness in some of the interpretations, we're wanting to get specifics of the bylaws as they're written and to make sure that they've been exercised equally and transparently throughout all applications that have happened in the last few years.
Okay, so if we approve this application,
We're not approving an application right now.
okay, suppose we do,
We can't even, we don't even know, because all we're doing is making sure that the application process is consistent and uniform.
okay.
So we're not even talking about an application right now. That
Okay.
application has been been withdrawn, but it has been postponed.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, will any of the rules that are interpreted be carried forward? Like, for example, if we make a decision if there's a decision made to change the bylaws, for example, will that apply to everybody that applies in the future?
We don't know if they need to be changed or not. All we're doing is asking for a report back to council at this point to do the research.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no decision, it's just simply to do the reports. Okay? Any other questions? See none? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, we can let. Okay, we're now on to the consent agenda. Any council member who wishes to remove any item for further discussion may do so at this time. Councillor Cryer.
I would like to remove item 7C,
Okay.
school district.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so someone to move the consent agenda? Moved, seconded, any discussion? See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, we'll now move on to 7C, School District 43 Mental Health Initiative Proposal. The recommendation would read?
The council received communication from School District 43 dated July 15th, 2020 regarding mental health initiative proposal for information.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Now I'll open up to Councillor Cryer.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. I just want to, I don't believe there's any action required, but I just wanted to state that I've been following the creation of the SD43 Foundation. And depending what goes on in the future, I think it's important that we support specifically the mental health initiative, simply because a lot of the students that are having mental health issues, that's their only place of support is in the school system. So if they can develop something outside of the 8 hours that they're in school, it would only benefit them in the future, especially when they move on past secondary education and develop a good, healthy relationship with RCMP, as well as hopefully a peer or a support worker. So as things start to develop, I hope that we can continue to follow it and support in any way we can.
Good. Thank you. Any other comments? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to 9A, legislative reports, management report and statement of financial information. The recommendation would read, I'll refer this to Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. My comments will be brief. This is our annual statement of financial information that we're legislatively required to present every year. We have to make these documents available by March 31st each year, which they were. There was no request for information in relation to Sophie this year to date. Once Council has approved the management report as well as the statement of financial information, it will be submitted as required to the province. It should be noted that typically this report is due to be submitted by June 30th in each year, but because of this year's global pandemic COVID-19, they extended the deadline to August 31st. But we will be looking to send it ahead of that deadline once Council does approve it. So I'm certainly available to answer any questions that Council might have on the report.
If you want to read the recommendation, please.
The recommendation is that Council approve the 2019 Statement of Financial Information as presented at the July 21st, 2020 regular Council meeting.
Want to move that? Moved, seconded. Open up for discussion. See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move over to 9B, the 2019 annual report presentation. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So the 2019 annual report is included in page 27 of your agenda package. This is an annual requirement that typically would be required by June 30th, but again, due to COVID, the deadline has been extended to August 31st. The report includes audited financial statements, report on municipal services and operations for the previous year, as well as objectives and measures for the current and following year. There is a requirement for opportunity for public input, and there was advertising in the July 2nd and 9th Tri-City News. As well, the annual report has been on the website since the 7th of July and available for public viewing. At this time, there have been no comments received. However, Council would give an opportunity to anybody tonight that wishes to make a comment on the report before considering approval of that as well. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Good. Could you read the recommendation then, please?
Certainly. Would you like to ask if there's any members of the public who would like to comment on the annual report or ask questions for the recommendation?
Anybody like to make comments on the annual report? It should be in the, it's in the agenda package. Oh. Oh. Okay.
I'll take an extra one.
We knew we had one for you. do you want a moment to look through it? It's on page 27. Okay. 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 Okay, so the recommendation would be then that council approve the 2019 annual report as attached to the agenda. Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. See, update to the municipal ticket information utilization bylaw. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. This has been before council for readings, and this is just for adoption. So the recommendation would be that council adopt Anmore Municipal Ticket Information Utilization Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 627, 2020.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to 9D, the 2020 property tax sale deferment. Ms. Elrick again.
Thank you. Again, this has been before council for first three readings, so the recommendation tonight would be that council adopt Anmore 2020 Property Tax Sale Date Deferment Bylaw, number 630, 2020.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And then finally, we have the solid waste management bylaw amendment. Ms. Elrick again.
Thank you. Again, this has been before council for first three readings, so the recommendation tonight would be that council adopt Anmore Solid Waste Management Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 629, 2020.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Perfect, thank you. Okay, and now we're moving on to the amended agenda portion, which was 9F, which is the Anmore Parking Regulation and Enforcement Bylaw Amendment and MTI Bylaw Amendment. So I would refer this over to Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. So as you stated, this is an amendment to the agenda for tonight, and it is somewhat in response to the sort of exponential increase in issues we've seen this summer around parking and traffic concerns in relation to Bunsen Lake. So we've had some staffing discussions internally, and I think for those of you who might not be aware, we had an agreement with the Village of Belcarra to share a bylaw officer during the summer months only on a part-time basis on evenings and statutory holidays where the weather was sort of intended to be very nice. And then this year, when we realized that even when the weather isn't necessarily warm and sunny, we were still seeing the closures that we do on those warm, sunny days, asked her to just be in regularly on weekends. We found out with, unfortunately, not very much notice that she was no longer going to be available to us by the Village of Belcarra. So at this point, we don't have a bylaw officer that we have dedicated to weekends and statutory holidays for enforcement. However, I am working to reallocate current staff to be able to facilitate coverage for those days. Part of that is what you see within the parking regulation enforcement bylaw, which essentially gives me the authority to appoint bylaw enforcement officers. So the intent would be that the current staff we have, perhaps in Public Works, would be designated by me as someone who could issue tickets and work on the weekend to do so. So there's that portion of the change for the parking regulation and enforcement bylaw, and further to that, we needed to add some clarity around when a parking infraction took place, and so we've clarified that it's 20 meters within any no parking sign. So as a result of what we've seen lately, we're coming up with a plan to install some additional no parking signs. People are parking in areas that they never have before because of all of the congestion and the desire to get to the various lakes in the area. And so we'll be looking at putting signs in, and what this basically allows us to do is put up a sign anywhere within the village, and if anybody parks within 20 meters of it, we can ticket them. So, the way that the bylaw is, without that sort of clause in it, it's very specific on a map as to where the no parking zones are. So this amendment bylaw also addresses that. And then we're also looking at, through the MTI bylaw, increasing the fine amount from $100 to $200 for those particular offenses. So that is sort of an overview of those two bylaw amendments that we're asking council to consider. If we do go forward tonight with readings, we will look to book a special meeting that will be open to the public for adoption of those bylaws. As Mayor McEwen mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, we don't have anything scheduled between now and September. So obviously we want to get these bylaws adopted as soon as possible so that we can start enforcing them. So I'm available to answer any questions. We also have our building inspector and bylaw officer, Martin Gregg, here to answer questions that I might not be able to myself.
So did you want to, so we have two separate recommendations?
Yes, and I can read them. I can read them to you individually. So,
Okay.
would you like to consider both? You'll consider the parking regulation enforcement bylaw amendment first.
Sure.
Okay. So the recommendation is that council grant first, second, and third reading to Anmore parking regulation and enforcement bylaw amendment number 631-2020.
Someone to move that? Moved and seconded. I'll open it for discussion. Councillor Webering?
Yeah, I sympathize with people that, want to get to the lake. I get it. And I think one of the things that's made the whole problem worse is Bunsen is now, you get 50% of the parking lot full, they close the lake because they know there's going to be people walking in. So there's more pressure to find parking in the village. I know when they start parking on my street where it is allowed, I know that lake is full and everything's going crazy in the village. I wonder if we could go back to a resident-only parking, or, we used to have window stickers, and the idea of the window stickers is when we used to go through the roadblocks, they would just wave you through because you're an Anmore resident, but it's also a way of, if it's a resident parking on the street, the bylaw officer would just maybe walk by them. It also eliminates parking spaces, so there's less pressure, less temptation for people to actually cruise the streets and try and park. But yeah, it's getting worse and worse. I mean, there was an article in the paper today about what was going on here in the weekend. And there's only so much we can do. But if we've got to keep advancing this, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple things. I was here on the weekend, and and it was pretty unbelievable. I've never seen it like that before. And I do respect Bunsen Lake. They're wanting to make sure that the lake is not at overcapacity. They're wanting to make sure that people are social distancing. That's not the case that's happening over at Sassamat Lake. It's an absolute, a literally gong show. People aren't even recognizing the no parking thing. We had a meeting earlier on today with the Mayor of Port Moody and CAO, and I think he said people just literally have taken 27 no parking signs and actually just disposed of them. They just take them out. They can't even keep up. They have two bylaw people there going, and I was kind of shocked and we told them what we were planning on doing regarding our ticketing. Belcarra, we're matching what Belcarra is doing in their municipality with the 200, and then if you pay within a certain time, the tow trucks aren't able to keep up. They just aren't. And it's becoming, I've never seen it so dangerous as coming back along Bedwell Bay Road from Crystal Creek, and you have cars on each side of the road and people pulling over, doing U-turns. It is absolutely a recipe for disaster to happen. So we have to do whatever we can. We've also, I've never seen before, parking on Sunnyside from the intersection of First there, cars parked all the way up to halfway up the hill. And so, and on both sides. So, I was here. I sent Julie and or Ms. Halliwell and Mr. Gregg a picture. We couldn't even get into the village hall here if there was an emergency. They had completely jammed this parking lot full. So, we need to do everything that we can. Health and safety. I know this is going to cost some money, but we have to make sure that we keep our roads clear, that the fire department can get through in case of an emergency. There was a couple calls out recently to the lake, so this is of the utmost importance for the well-being of our municipality. I did mention to Ms. Halliwell about going back to the decals. She did have some concerns about cost, so she's going to come back to us. But I agree that I think it's wise. We cannot. Some of the signs, like in Ravenswood, have resident-only parking, and people now are taking advantage of it. We can't tell what is a resident and what isn't. So it's getting really, really bad. I don't see it changing. I see it actually getting worse because hopefully Port Moody is going to put some steps in place to limit the access to Sassamat Lake, because it is absolutely unbelievably unhealthy what's going on down there. So anyway, I'm very supportive of this. Thank you for the quick turnaround, and I will be available anytime when we can get a meeting to finalize this, to give Mr. Gregg all the powers that he needs to be able to make sure that we keep the municipality safe. Mr. Trowbridge.
Yeah, I'm supportive as well. I just have a couple of sort of executional questions. The concept of installing parking signs, and then, you know, clearly within the 20-meter limit, you know that car is not supposed to be there. How fast can we install a number of signs? And to Mayor McEwen's point, can we at least set them in concrete if I can't be lifted out and made away with?
Yeah, so through the mayor, we have had some discussions already with our Public Works Department, and Mr. Gregg might be able to provide some more specifics around the delivery, but I know that our Public Works, if like within this, with them ordering the signs that we've already been requesting them to do so, they've been able to turn it around within about a week or less.
Okay.
I will mention that.
Sorry, including install?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So really, it's just waiting for the delivery of the signs, and then
Okay.
they ensure that they're prioritizing their work to install the signs. I will say that it's going to likely, especially with the number of signs we're looking at, take our public works staff away from the current work that they are doing in terms of trail improvements and, you know, the trimming and the mowing around the village. So there may be a bit of a backlog as a result of having to take them away from their current roles and responsibilities. If I may, and I'm happy to come back to it if other members of council want to speak, but I did want to just address the resident sticker program as well.
Please do it now, and then we have Councillor Cryer. Oh, sorry, are you finished?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
The parking ticket of $200. If someone is towed, for example, do they have to pay that ticket to get their car out of impound?
We have had agreement from Coquitlam Towing that they would implement that, so that they have to pay the ticket and have proof of that before their car is released.
Now, if Coquitlam is over capacity, can we strike a deal with another towing company as well?
Well, we have not entered into a formal contract with Coquitlam Towing. We've had discussions with them, but given our previous limited sort of revenue generation capacity, there wasn't a feeling from that firm that they wanted to enter into a formal contract with us like they do with the other Tri-City communities. So we are completely able to discuss and contract with other towing companies, and we will be because of the capacity issues that they've been having.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Councillor Cryer.
I just want to say that I agree with everything that we've been saying, and I also think we need to really take a fulsome look at what's going on. And this is not the year to do it with COVID, and right now I feel like we're a little bit in reaction mode, so I'm pleased that we're able to get these signs up and that we're able to get these bylaws changed. But I think maybe next year we could take a look at a better way for the entire situation to be handled so that it's less of a stress on our residents. I mean, we're all getting emails and phone calls on weekends, and it's a lot, and we know it's a benefit of living here, but maybe we can, the stickers or some other type, I think we maybe just need to have a fulsome conversation about it.
Good. Did you want to speak about the stickers first before we turn it over to Mr.
Sure,
Craig?
yeah. So certainly, as you alluded to, there would be a cost associated with this, like having a resident sticker program, and including bringing a staff person on a part-time basis to administer that program. So to issue the stickers and make sure that they're tracking the homes and the vehicles that they've been issued to. And that's definitely a possibility, and I'm more than happy to implement that. It would have budget impacts, and if council would like to give some direction, maybe after we've considered this particular resolution, maybe a subsequent resolution in order for me to either implement that program with the associated costs, or for me to report back with what the estimated cost might be. It will be difficult to turn around that kind of information quickly and with any sort of definitive nature, because I haven't been part of the resident sticker program that was here before, and so I don't have a very clear picture on how many hours it might take for someone to administer it in this day today. So that would just be my feedback there.
And I think the practicality is this would be something that would not really be that applicable this this summer, during this season. I think it's something that we would institute in the fall, get it rolling. Mr. Gregg lives in Belcarra. How does the program work there? Is it fairly effective?
It is. I mean, their signage is good, and they've done permit parking everywhere. Yeah, it's been quite good.
Okay.
They've done a lot of safety, quite a bit of towing as well.
And how, and so getting back to our situation, what have you experienced when you've been around here, like you were here on Saturday?
Chaos. I mean, we can certainly improve our signage, and we're working on that.
Okay.
But it has been a lot of people just parking on the wrong side of the road because they think they can do it. So I mean, I almost issued a whole ticket book of tickets on Saturday.
Wow.
I couldn't get equipment towing up here. I think they did come to Crystal Creek a couple of times. There's people obstructing they're actually parking into the intersection here. And you pull one away and another one comes and takes their place. So then there's new areas occurring all the time where people are figuring out that they can park there and access the lake. So we were talking this morning that up near the gas rights away where that trail is on Crystal Creek, they park in there and just walking down the trail, and it brings them out of the concession stand by the beach. So it's very convenient. And then, yeah, there's another place where they park and just walk down the hill, and basically with the parking signs end, they start parking. So we've got more no parking signs and just a business-like no parking zones so that they look like we mean business. I think that's a really important issue.
Any other, Councillor Irving?
I'm going to throw this out there. I mean, in this day and age of electronics, I mean, I agree this year is kind of a write-off. There's COVID, and then there's the fact that we haven't had good weather until about 3 days ago. It's definitely having an impact. But is it going to get to the point where Metro and Hydro have to issue permits before people even come up the hill? I think this is the whole problem. Even if you've got the sign at the bottom of the hill, there's got to be parking somewhere. And one person goes up, but it's not one person, it's 2,000 people that go up. If I cruise around enough, I will find a place to park and we'll walk in. I don't know what the solution is, but I think it's helped a bit, that sign down there, but it's not working.
Yeah, I can speak to Metro Vancouver is starting a pilot project out in Delta, and we're doing, which is a third of the lot will be reserved. And we're going to see it's out for RFP right now. So we're going to see how that works, and that may be following up. But the problem with Sassamat Lake is, even though the parking lot, we could limit the parking lot to half from a regional park perspective, it still isn't going to take the capacity down because the accessibility of the lake is so vast. There's 3/4 of the lake is available by a road, the outskirts of a road. So it's a big issue. I know that we're going to have a follow-up conversation with Port Moody and Metro Vancouver, which I'll be representing as well. So we will be working on this. There was talk about hopefully turning people away before even getting into the village. But then the problem is that we receive funding from on East Road and Sunnyside from the major road networks for accessibility to those roads, and we can't turn people away. As well, BC Hydro and Sassamat Lake and Belcarra Park are all regional tax dollars that are going in to keep them operational. So it's a tough one, and it's kind of weird because the signs haven't had that great of an effect like they did last year. Seems like people. I think somebody had said to me, they're willing to take the fee, the parking fee in Port Moody is somewhat ridiculous. What was it? Did he say today? It was $35.
Yeah, it was $50, and they could pay $25 if it was within a certain period of time.
So
or something.
literally, they were just simply the price to park. Yeah. So they need to address that. So we brought that up to their attention. So thank you, everybody. I don't see, or Councillor Laidler, former Vancouver police.
This is just a question. Could we not put double yellow lines down the road instead of signs? No parking?
They're ignoring the no parking.
Right, but if you put yellow signs down, it's going to be cheaper than, the yellow lines are going to be cheaper than the signs. They can't dig them out. And on top of that, we can cover more roads than we can with signs.
Well, that would all be in Port Moody, where the issue is.
Do we not have any problems here then?
Not if we have the adequate signage.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I see nothing. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
So then further to that,
Yeah.
in terms of the next update, it would be for the Anmore Municipal Ticket Information Utilization Amendment Bylaw, which is the partner to our
Yeah.
bylaws that allows us to fine. So the recommendation would be that council grant first, second, and third reading to Anmore Municipal Ticket Information Utilization Amendment Bylaw number 632-2020.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And then we'll go on, and then the final recommendation would be that we ask staff for a report regarding, a DECL program
For a
being
resident sticker
instituted. Yeah,
program. And just for clarification from staff, would you be looking for that to be implemented then post-summer?
Yes.
For a report back in September?
sure. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, good.
We understand. Thanks. So does someone want to move that? Moved, seconded? Any discussion?
Well, I'll just
Okay.
speak to it quickly. Yeah, back in the day, it was really simple. It was just you'd go in and you'd get a sticker. I think you had to show some proof of residence. But yeah, you could probably get 6 stickers and give them to your friends. So it's probably a good idea to connect them with the car registration. So yeah, you would have to have some sort of database and keep track of it, and maybe a numbered sticker.
Yeah, good. Okay. So nothing further. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we'll go into, we have no unfinished business. 11A new business, Anmore Community Hub Public Consultation Report. Report dated July 16th, 2020 from Johnson David Architects attached. Ms. Halliwell, and then we have the consultants Kim Johnson and Ed Craig are here to present.
Thank you. So I just want to start off by welcoming the architects, Johnson Davidson, to do the presentation, and also I understand that we're having a little bit of issues with the audio on the mic at that podium. I'm not too sure why, but people appear to be able to hear me, so I'm just going to move my mic over for you, and it just hasn't been sanitized, so we can just leave it on.
What about Chris's mic? It's closer, and he never says anything.
I'm not certain what's going on with the mic.
Oh, okay.
If that one is
Okay,
working or
okay.
not. So I know this one is, and so I'll hand it over to Kim, and then I'll come back over to you.
Welcome, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for having us. We're here just to give a summary and an overview of the report that's been produced on the public engagement sessions to date on the Anmore Community Hub project. So the report that you will see, I think that's also attached to the agenda. It goes through all of the questions that were asked in the survey, also discuss the public engagement, the public town hall meetings, as well as a number of other items, and also contains direct data from that survey as well. So that's extracted straight from the survey. So in looking at the public engagement sessions, we were able to use a number of options to garner information from the community at large. Those included the survey that was online, as well as a website that was put together, in addition to 3 town hall meetings, 2 which were done in person, but at a nicely spatially distanced kind of arena, and 1 that was done online. And in addition to that, there was also a flyer that was sent out to notify people of the various options in which to relay their information or their input to the team. In terms of the online survey, we had 139 responses submitted. 138 of those were done digitally, and 1 was submitted in a paper format. So that kind of gives you an overview of the numbers on the survey side. In the public open houses, we had 65 attendees for all 3. And 19 were on the first open house that was done in person, and 42 on the second, and then we had an open house on digital that had 4 people attend as well. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an overview. The website and survey were up until last week, so there was a lot of information that came in on that. What I thought I would do is just give you an overview quickly of the common themes that were discussed and how we came to determine whether something was a common theme or not, as well as our evaluation of how we took a look at the survey, our evaluation methods. And then I thought I'd just use that evaluation and demonstrate and review a couple of the questions, because obviously there are 23 questions in total, and we would be here a very long time if I went through detail every one, but all of them are outlined in the report for sure, followed up again, like we said, with that data that comes straight from the survey that's been untouched, with the exception of redaction of a couple of names in there. That's the only thing that's been altered from the information. The system that was used was a program called SurveyMonkey, and the information that you'll see in the back of the report, like I said, comes directly from that system and has been unedited in any way from that except for the redaction. So in looking at some of the common themes that came up in terms of the community feedback survey and also discussion at the town hall meetings, but we really have stuck to evaluating the community feedback survey because that was where we had written data in order to analyze. The town hall meetings were done in a more casual setting and certainly in a verbal exchange of information. So the majority of this report really does focus on the evaluation of the data that was produced as a result of the survey. There were some common themes that were addressed, and common themes were decided on by any subject matter that had per question, and then evaluated overall the 23 questions. Any key terms that were mentioned by 5 or more respondents in an open-ended question was related to a common theme, and then we obviously had specific questions that addressed a strongly agree or somewhat agree and then disagree entirely with questions. So we'll go through that in a little bit more data here, but a number of the topics that came up, and this is just uniform information, there is no positive or negative response given in this terms of evaluation here, were cost of the project, scale of the project, parking, an idea of income generation, and also discussions around the community room, usage, size, again, location, sort of access to exterior, a number of different ideas. But those were the number of common themes that were addressed. Within the survey, we had 3 types of questions, and in the report, you'll see that on page 7 that we outline the different types of questions and the basis for an evaluation. The first type was an open-ended question where participants were able to write in their answer to the question, and so we had a variety of different responses for that, and again those are all included in the back of the report, and those questions, open-ended questions, are also listed under the red portion there which describes open-ended questions, so there's a number of them that fall under this category. Any key terms that were mentioned by more than 5 respondents in open-ended questions were considered a key theme, as we talked about before, and key themes listed in the report here are actually done in no particular order. So when we look at the various questions, we can examine that. The second option was called a Likert or matrix question, which allowed people to choose one of 5 options, whether they strongly agree all the way down to the middle portion, and then to the end where I strongly agree and strongly disagree, and then a middle option as well. So participants were able to produce an answer based on that. And in one of the categories, we actually had multiple choice answer about the uses of the community room, so people were allowed to contribute in more than one way in that particular question. The other option, the third option, was a slider question, where there was a low score and a high score, and people were allowed to answer that question based on where they felt their response was in terms of positive or negative, strongly disagree, or strongly agree. So those are the 3 types of questions that were contained within the survey. And then the last 2 I should mention, questions 22 and 23 were purely demographical questions and for information purposes only. So Taking a look at what I thought I'd do is just run through a couple of the questions that examine each type of question and take a look at how those results and what the data was that was based on them. We'll start with question 1, and you can see within the report, and which starts on page 8, that each one of the questions, 1 through all the way to 21, had non-demographical information, so those were contributable. They also have a highlight in a color. So every title is done in a color, and that is directly related to the type of question they are. So open-ended questions had a title that was done in red, the Likert or matrix questions were done in blue, and the slider questions were highlighted in green. So you could quickly see what type of question they were without having to go back and forth necessarily to all of that. So as an example, question 1 was a question about gender-neutral washrooms, and overall it had a very high completion rate. So where we had 139 responses overall, this had 131 respondents answering that question. 8 skipped the question. And then what we look at the data, 65 respondents showed strong support for this question, and that means that was evaluated through the words that were used within the written report. And again, we evaluated that based on the number of times we heard great or good or accepted, and so that was able to mark ourselves into the middle section, the high and the low. So we sort of analyzed those numbers and chose where we put people's answers in that, and those again were based on finding common words that were used in each one of the written responses. 65 of the respondents showed strong support, 33 showed some support, 6 were undecided, and 27 do not support this approach. So that relates really to 49% of the respondents showed strong support, 25 showed some support, and 20% showed absolutely a negative response to the idea of having gender-neutral washrooms. There were some other additional comments and concerns that were raised within this, and some of those are related to privacy, safety, and a general feeling of uncomfortable feeling in sharing the space with opposite gender. And there were a lot of questions that related to how many stalls does one have in the building, and we can definitely answer that in sort of a more detailed form that relates to certainly BC Building Code. There were some great ideas that came through, key themes, the addition of family rooms, the addition of having some changing tables, and certainly an overall importance with accessibility. So this was a question that was based on people providing a written response, and again, those full responses are located towards the rear of the package. In moving through the questions and looking at one of the items that took a look at a sliding scale, we looked at question number 4, completing the basement. There were 89 responses to this question, so 50 people actually skipped the question and did not provide a response. The average answer on the sliding scale was 46. And when we looked at that and we ranked this scale of being, if you had a respondent of the top third numbers, you were in a supportive role, the middle third, you were in an undecided role, and the bottom third in a role that decided that they were unsupportive of that action. And in looking at that, the 32 that were in the upper range of the scale, that represented 35%. Those who showing support and increase to finish the basement, so increasing the budget in order to finish the basement. 19 fell within the middle range, which represented 21%, and 38 were selected in the lower range, which represents 42% of the overall respondents to that particular question. So that sort of gives you an idea of how we approach the sliding scale and how we were able to evaluate that. In moving through the package, again, what we did is we then took a look at one of the answers which required responses through the matrix or the Likert model, and we went to question 13, taking a look at the important specific uses of the community room. And I think this is a very interesting one because in the package towards the back of the elements, and it's a bit of a tough one to find, there's some great graphics there which actually show everybody's responses. And there was a multiple choice here, so everybody was able to rank the importance of those suggested uses. It became quite clear within the package that council meetings, the use of council meetings for the community room were of the highest importance, and then followed by some events such as obviously using for polling station, Christmas events, club meeting spaces then became the next. So this particular question allowed us to ask multiple options for the community room and the respondents to have a chance to provide answers in that way. In looking at the next kind of question, which was, we took a look at one of the most, I think, well-answered questions in some ways in terms of the detailed and amount of response that was given. Question 21, which is the general feedback on the project, had a number of mixed responses. And this one was a challenge to evaluate due to the number of themes that came through that. But as we've listed here, when we took a look at that and really analyzed the verbiage that was used in all of those, trying to use the exact same lens that we used for each one of the other questions that followed the same format, the common themes that came out were responses about cost, questions about what will it cost, some believing that the cost was too high, certainly some that the projects that would discuss the cost factor as being important in information that they would like to receive in further sessions, and certainly one that they would like to be answered. So costs, and a number of respondents responded that the cost should be kept down, as well as maintenance costs as the building was developed in more detail. Size was another very key theme in that. A number of groups felt that or respondents felt that the space was too large. A number asked if the size could be reduced. So 14% of the respondents talked about it being too large. But another session, a group of those also questioned how the space could be reallocated within that. There were a number of groups that did also provide positive input towards the size, and that's all detailed in those questions towards the end. And then as we move further through that question, the key themes became a little less strongly common throughout the groups, such as how do we pay for the project? Would this be a tax burden to those residents? Talking about integrating playground facilities, and certainly fostering a community gathering space, which was very key for a lot of people. And concerns were raised around the community spaces and how that could be used. I think a little bit maybe based on the input that you see of people coming to your beautiful area, but looking at how would somebody renting space, if that was an option, impact the use of it for the community. So there were a number of comments around that particular theme. I think in addition to that, obviously there's a lot of data in here, but that sort of gives an overall summary of some of the questions that were in there. We're certainly able to go through every question if people have responses or would like additional information, but hopefully that gives you an overview on how we tackled each one of them. We tried to ensure that the same lens was used over each one of the questions, and it was a very neutral lens, reporting on both neutral, positive, and negative comments that might have arisen from the presentation. So that kind of ends my portion of the report. I bet you want your microphone back.
I'll just take the opportunity to come up here and stand, and certainly open it up to the floor for council to ask any questions of Kim and her team.
Okay, sorry, Kim. I'm just a little confused with, I guess, the criteria. When I see these bars, I have to find a bar.
You usually have no problem finding a bar.
Find one after the meeting too. Okay, so say for example on page 105 of our agenda, you've got a response here from 0 to 50, and it's about, I don't know, 48. So is that kind of a sliding scale, like it kind of does this, and this is where we stop?
That's, it represents the average response. So
Okay.
the average response of everybody was 48.
Okay, and so, and it's out of 50 or out of 100?
That particular one is out of 50. Now,
Oh.
the template for SurveyMonkey applies that 100, 0 to 100 or 0 to 50, unfortunately indiscriminately.
Oh.
And so there are some that are out of 1 to 50 and another few sliding scales that are out of 1 to 100.
Oh,
But what you're seeing the bar represent there is the average answer,
Okay.
the number of the average answer that was provided by all of the participants that are there.
So it's kind of a point in the scale?
That's correct. And
Okay.
what we tried to do in the analysis of the report was provide an overview of how many were in the higher range, how many were in the lower range, and how many were in the mid.
I see.
And then that bar represents the exact average of the
Okay,
answers.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is very close to 50. Okay, question 11. I was a little confused. It says the question was completed by 90 respondents, blah, blah, blah. The average answer was 59 out of 100, one being too small, 100 being too large.
Right.
So 59 would suggest that people, on average, are a little higher, thinking it's too large. So, but then at the bottom it says 0 to 33, indicating a reduction in size, 34 to 66 indicating keeping the size the same, and 67 to 100 indicating to increase the size. That seems counterintuitive, because if we had a higher number, say we had 100, that would suggest that it's too large. But 67 to 100 says indicating to increase the size, so I think maybe there's an error there.
Yeah, okay, I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
I think the idea was to say that those who voted from 0 to 33 were in the range that said that the answer was to be reduced the size, the middle was undetermined, and then the 67 and above was that the size should be larger. So
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
certainly
the numbers in the middle regardless, it's sort
Yeah.
of like some for, some
Yeah.
against. Okay, and then, yeah, okay, that's, I'm not too happy with some of the comments at the back. Some very nasty
Yeah.
comments that I thought
Yeah.
would be beneath some of our residents, and I'll tell you, the real nasty ones I'm ignoring. I'm not
Yeah.
even gonna respond to that. That's just
Yeah,
unbelievable.
there were some very tough questions or answers, I should say. They were very outside what we would have expected to hear.
Yeah,
I have to tell you, it really puts a black mark on this community. I was really put off with that. It's one thing to be critical of a decision, but to come at us personally, I don't have time for
yeah,
it.
I was beside myself reading
Yeah.
some of them. It's just
Yeah.
like, we're trying to do something good here. We had a village hall proposed a few years ago that was of significant size. We had a community hall that was proposed of significant size. They were never built. I mean, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to do a positive thing, and I was just, and it seemed almost like, I think some people skipped the survey and just went right to the end and said,
It did seem that way, and you could see that in the number of responses. So
Yeah.
the first question started off really strong,
Yeah.
and then it petered out, and then there was certainly, as you had noted, some inappropriate responses to some degree.
and they seem to be grouped together
Yes.
at the same time. I look at it like an engineer.
Yes,
Statistically,
numbers and patterns.
And
Yeah.
similarly,
There was some patterns
very
there.
much
Yes.
similarly worded
There
as
is
well.
some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
that's disappointing to
Yeah.
me, but that's what we signed up for, so unfortunately.
any other
That's it.
questions and comments of Kim? No? Oh, Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, on just your summary on 21, it states, I'll let you find it first. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. 44 skip, 95 respondents, around 17% who stated the cost was too high. And then next paragraph, at the top, around 14% or 19 explicitly stated that the space was too large. Does that, and I appreciate you being clear about the negative responses, because we need to hear that and we need to be respectful of that. But does that indicate that the other vast majority say it's just right, or what is that indicating?
I think it really indicates in a lot of ways that only 14% of those who responded felt that the project was too large, and
Right.
and only 17% of them felt it was too expensive, because the group was given a wide berth here and an ability to respond to any of those kinds of comments. That's what this particular question was giving people room for, was to not write inappropriate comments, but certainly respond on any topic that they felt had not been covered by the survey. And I think it's important to understand that this survey was about the content of the project, not if the project was running. We have not reached a spot at this point about costing. It was really to be about the content and size of the project and talking about what it entailed. So this did open up an avenue for people to openly respond. So it really does appear as only 17% of those who did respond to this question felt that that was an answer they needed to provide.
Yeah, so 83% think it's fine, essentially. But it's interesting to me, given that we have an established costing, because I was also deeply offended by some of the comments that were just really very, very juvenile, just absolutely insulting, and had really nothing to do with what we were trying to accomplish, which was get feedback, positive or negative, but get feedback to do the right thing. But the costing one, I saw comments about costs in the 12 million, 14 million, 10 million. We've never discussed any of those numbers ever.
No.
And the range we put out was just sort of a thumbnail sketch, and suddenly it seems we have some extremists that take it to the end zone and create a cost problem. But I'm heartened that others have actually read the documents and not read into the documents, and it would appear the vast majority are quite positive and can understand an amenity for the community has some value. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Did you have anything, or I'll just... Kim, just quickly, and I don't want to put you on the spot, because the folklore that's being created with these numbers is quite interesting.
Yes.
It seems by the week it goes up 1 million, which is quite interesting, and I saw the 14 million as well. And, when we initially started this off, we were approximately about 6 million, and Stuart, who did the initial, was even a little under that. I know, because I am good friends with the mayor of Pitt Meadows, Mayor Dingwall. You're doing a project with them right now, a much more complex job than us, which is 3 levels in a fire hall, intricate ventilation system and that, and you are right about to start building that?
That's correct. Well, we're not. We are at 95% working drawings as of this Friday.
Okay. So what is that price per foot, just to give us an idea, just to give us something to in relation?
Yeah, we looked at that this morning, and forgive me, I have other numbers, but that number was close to the 500, I think I said 502 mark.
So say let's just round up, so $500 a foot.
And that's a Class B estimate, so that's like...
Pretty, that's
right before tender.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do a Class A, but that's Class A, by that point, your contingencies are really down to almost nothing, and as you said, that project is significantly more complicated.
So 3 levels, it's much more intricate.
Yes.
Would be the same disaster response because it is a fire hall.
Yes.
Even like Stuart, when he initially took us down this path, was quoting a number of $400 a foot. So I'm just going to simple math so everybody can grasp it. If we build 10,000 or 12,000 square feet at 400, say 450.
Yes.
We're still under $5 million.
You are, and we, using those numbers and indeed the comment from the same cost estimate, we took a look at those numbers with them.
Yeah, good.
And a very high level, and you are in that range.
Yeah, okay, that's all I want to, it's something that we need to get a number out there so that we can stop the fear mongering, the folklore that it seems to create legs. So, anyway, and the funny thing about this is that I've been fortunate enough to be on council since 2006, when a community center was proposed here at $2.5 million, which did not even include any administrative offices whatsoever.
Right.
And then I was also on council, and I voted against this, which I wanted to bring up to you. This came out in 2014 before this council was proposed, and that was, the size was just for administrative without a community component. So what we're doing here is we're actually putting it all together. But this, I voted against this because we didn't have the funding in place. We, as we all know,
Either project, I believe.
Pardon?
I believe for either project,
Yeah.
there's no funding in place.
No, and that's why the first one failed. So
Yeah.
anyway, I just thank you for that,
Yeah,
and thank you
you're
for the
welcome.
presentation. Sorry, did you have something?
Just one question, just to address the people that are saying that this is a done deal and design drawings are done. As a professional architect, what percent stage of design drawings are we at, Kim? 0%?
Yeah, not quite there, but you're really around 12.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because our
Work
design
concept.
development portion of the project really represents, once we finished it, would represent 20% of the overall project scope. And so you're really looking at a very small, because we're not really a great way through that. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
Good.
And, okay.
Yeah. Councillor Cryer.
I just briefly want to say thank you for all of the work that you've done and your patience at the open houses, because you did get a lot of difficult questions, and I think you did a terrific job of turning some people around and really explaining to them in such a way, and also with Mayor McEwen and my fellow councilors there. I think we did have a very good dialogue with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And as far as the survey goes, a big thank you to the people that gave us constructive, maybe negative, maybe positive, but very constructive and worthwhile information, which is what we were seeking
Yeah.
when we started this project. And to the rest of the folks that made very inappropriate comments, it's an embarrassment to the community, and it's also embarrassing for them to think that that's okay.
Yeah.
For them to say that in writing for the entire community now to read. Some of their statements were childish, is an excellent way to put it, and we take that very personally.
Yeah.
We're trying our best to do something good for the village that,
That's not who we are.
yeah, and we are not that, and that is not what we're doing. So I just want to thank you for your patience, and
Thank you. Thank you for
Good.
the
really
opportunity.
appreciate this.
And I do agree with you. There are a lot of really good comments in here about different ideas and different ways of looking at space. And I think it was a very interesting experience for us, for sure, to have that dialogue. So
We
Good.
learned
yeah.
things that we didn't know.
Yeah.
Good.
That people were interested in. It's very nice.
Thank you, Kim. I will call you tomorrow. Okay.
So maybe if I may, I just wanted to follow up and just sort of, as in terms of next steps, I think council would like to take the next little while to sort of, digest the feedback and consider it over the summer weeks that we're going to be facing between now and September. And the expectation would be that staff would report back on some recommended next steps in terms of moving the project forward. So unless there's any disagreement from council on that, that's how we'll proceed.
Perfect. Good. Okay, we'll now move on to our 2020 Capital Works Award, and this is a good news story that we have with, I see refer to Miss Halliwell, so.
And I'm going to refer it right over to Mr. Voigt.
My own microphone.
Hopefully people will be able to hear you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor McEwen. So I'd like to report back, we tendered the capital works program just at the end of June. We gave a 3-week tender window. It closed on July 14th. We're evaluating the 5 bids that were sent in to us. I'm quite pleased to see that we had 5. Last year we only had 1, so you can see that this
Market has changed.
yeah, the market's changed somewhat compared to last year. Just for information, it is included in this tender package because of commercial reasons, but I actually put an estimate together originally for this work, and it came up to be 1.6 million on my estimate. So as you can see, a significant change in the value here compared to what we got. So it would be my recommendation that we award the work to All Roads Construction with an enterprise of just over $1.1 million.
Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. I'll open it for discussion. Councillor Weberink.
Yeah, so much of this money is TransLink funding, correct, Mayor
A
McEwen?
third of it.
A third of it. Okay.
No, Probably a little bit more now because the initial price has gone down
Through the
to
chair,
1.1.
it's just over $570,000 that we're receiving from TransLink.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay,
Which
so-
I was able to lobby quite aggressively for the smaller communities, so it worked out quite well.
I thought the funding model was even higher. I thought they went 75%.
75-25.
Yeah, it is 75-25
Okay, so that's half. 70 over 1.
of the portion that is.
Oh, the portion
yeah,
that translates.
yeah.
I get it. Okay. Mr. Boyd, could you just give a little bit of clarity of what exactly we're doing? I know we're going to upgrade the side. It's funny, I was walking along East Road the other day, and oh my God.
Did you trip over?
Yeah. I guess one of my questions, are the sidewalks going to be moved over? Because one of the problems with the sidewalks is they're so close to private trees. They're so narrow. You know, you've got the roots heaving everything. So is that going to be moved closer to the road? And obviously there's some ditches there. Is that going to be filled in?
Yeah, so we're going to create a consistent sidewalk width of 1.8 meters.
Right.
So that one will allow us to use the Kubota to actually be able to clear the pathways during the snow. So that's one of them. We've tried to create a consistent, what I would call an offset from the edge of asphalt. But however, say on Sunnyside Road, we have some hydro poles which are having to cause to move the sidewalk here and there a little bit, just to save the expense of having to relocate hydro poles. So the extent of that sidewalk will go from East Road all the way to Bunsen Lake, to where the existing mailboxes are outside of the convenience store.
Okay.
And then from Sunnyside Road down East Road to where the sidewalk was installed about 2-3 years ago now.
Which is already wide.
Which is already widened out, so it'll tie in back there.
Okay.
That'll be the extent of that sidewalk improvement. And then I suppose I'll just run through the map real quickly for everyone, so everyone understands what the projects will be. So area 1 is the sidewalks. Then area 2 is a Sunnyside Road rehab. So that'll be the continuation of the road rehab where we stopped a few years ago at the bottom of Sunnyside Road. The continuation up to more or less to Summerwood Lane.
Which is in not great
Which
shape.
is our worst piece of
Yeah.
roadway. Just I suppose for council's information, TransLink have gone through and they evaluate all the MRN roads, and as of next year they're evaluating it on a number of instances, but one of them is the actual rideability, which we call it, and they're trying to get everyone to an even playing field before they start evaluating this, and we're already failing that right now. So that's one of the important things, that we continue to invest in our roadways at this point in time, so we're not already failing that metric. So it's one thing there. So we're making a big step going forward, just doing this section here. So that's area 2. Area 3 is a culvert replacement. This is one of the large chunks of funding via TransLink. This will be a replacement of what's existing 2 culverts, which are basically rotten out and they need to be replaced as soon as possible. This was identified in a report 2 years ago from GeoPacific, so we're following up on the recommendations of that report, moving that forward. And then number 4, it's the handrail replacement on the large culvert in between Eagle Crest and Alpine.
Yep.
That's right. As most people will be aware, that handrail is more or less falling over, so it's due that we fixed it and made sure we got rid of that safety concern, so I'm glad to be moving that one forward. Area 5, countryside DVCAs. This is to do with, we have a municipal water system that runs through the countryside park there, and we're making sure that there can't be any contamination of our water source from a private water source. Typically, if there's ever a private water source connected to a municipal water source, there's always what's called a double check valve that stops any water, because we don't maintain that water system. We're making sure that we can't have anything come back into our system. So that's the reason for that one. Numbers. I just want to be on the record. Not that there is any contamination in the water source. It's just we're preventative measures, exactly. Number 6, this is the bus shelters, so we're installing 2 bus shelters. One will be outside of the fire hall, and the other one will be just out here where the mailboxes are.
And they will be covered?
They'll be covered, so they'll be covered, and they will be lit as well.
And they will be wheelchair accessible?
Yes.
Yep.
So all are great.
Okay.
Okay, and then that was number 6. Number 7, this is the removal of the small little pedestrian bridge just next to the presentation centre. That's kind of starting to rot out, and so we're going to remove that. We're going to extend the culvert, and we'll have a consistency with the sidewalk that's being put there as well. So that's just another one on the docket. And I think that is it. Nope, number 8. Sorry, and another culvert replacement, just off of Summerwood Lane there.
So this is such a good news story. You know, we hear from residents one of the main things that they want is the trails. Again, there's so many people out walking right now, especially with the COVID and that. And this is a really, really good news story. The funding that we're getting here through TransLink and through the reduction in cost, because a lot of other municipalities are not doing their road works. Mm-hmm. You know, we're probably saving, well, let's face it, about $1 million.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about it, what you thought the quote was going to be at 1.6, it comes in at 1.1, plus the funding that I was able to secure from TransLink. So yeah, we've saved here about $1 million, and we're getting pathways and roadways that we can maintain easier with the machinery that we have. Our community who are really excited about this.
Yeah, through the chair as well. Just like to say that, you know, this is another big step towards our the parks committee is working towards of the trail network. That the main spine of East Road and Sunnyside Road is really important to be able to connect all those trails together in a safe passage. So with this creation of this, you know, there's just there's still the goat trail, I would call it, down Sunnyside Road. That would be the next one to kind of concentrate to finally get it. But once we're there, we have a real nice spine going through the village that safe, accessible to all, easy to maintain.
Good.
All the other kind of stuff.
Good. Any other questions and comment? Oh, Councillor Weberink?
Sorry. Sorry, just back to the East Road. So I'm trying to picture it. So how far will the sidewalk be off of East Road?
So it'll be at least a meter, except for the very last piece where there's a bus stop which kind of
jogs in.
It'll be more or less to the gutter pan of that.
Okay, so it kind of eliminates the roots getting into the next path.
But we're going to have to change grade as we go through there. There are a few small retaining walls and little bits and pieces.
And a ditch too. I think there's a little.
Yeah, so there'll be ditch elimination as we go. So that'll be become piped, so we can actually have the room to build the sidewalk.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
Good. Any other questions, comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. When's work going to start?
Yeah, so on the schedule side, so we've had to wait for approval from council for the award of funding. Now I'll be able tomorrow to issue what's called notice of award. At that point, the contractor will send in all their paperwork. So the real short version is in about 2 weeks.
Which would be great. Great time in August when the traffic is,
Yeah.
not inconveniencing people, you know, going to and from the school, or although who knows what's going to happen this year with COVID, with school and that. So anyway, great works. Thank you for your work. Much appreciated. I'll now move it on to a bit of a sad note, which is 11C, the Montmory Day 2020. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you. Yes. So, as is probably not a big surprise to everybody, given the current state of the pandemic, we are looking to recommend to cancel Montmory Day this year, as we don't want to encourage that kind of gathering. And so the recommendation formally is that council directs staff to cancel the 2020 Montmory Day due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councilor Weber?
I think it's a real shame, but I think we have to do it. It's one event I really look forward to. I usually do about 5 jobs during it. But I really enjoy Montmory Day. It's a time that the community gets together. It's usually nice weather, but we've got to do the responsible thing, so it's too bad, but hopefully next year.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously, unfortunately. Okay, we'll now move on to the 2020 UBCM Convention, meeting requests with Premier Horgan and Provincial Cabinet Ministers and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you. So this does come forward each year, and although the UBCM convention in 2020 will be a virtual one and not in person for the same reasons that we just canceled Montmory Day, there still is an opportunity for council to request a meeting either with the Premier or any one of the various ministers for the different departments within the provincial government. So this is just an opportunity for council to make a specific request for staff to contact them and let them know that we're interested in having those meetings, and to specify who it is you would like to meet with.
Yeah, with it being a virtual, I don't know if it's going to be that essential to do it. I can tell council that I've already got plans in regards to once we get a little bit further on in our the village hub, that I'm going to be going and lobbying and meeting with a couple ministers and also federal ministers that I have a relationship with about securing some funding. So, but that doesn't really apply at this point. So I don't think we really need to do anything at this point.
And if I could too, I know that in terms of, our particular location and access to ministers, it is a little bit easier for us to request those meetings throughout the year. Typically, I think that during the UBCM convention, because it brings all municipalities from all over the province into one location, it's sort of beneficial for someone maybe from Prince George or Haida Gwaii to take the opportunity to meet, whereas it's not quite as easily accessible for them.
Yeah. Okay, well then we'll just move on. We have no committee of the whole mission. I'll move on to the mayor's report. Again, I just want to reiterate, I was quite disappointed in some of the comments on the survey. I found them deeply offensive. I just want everybody to know, all residents, that we are aggressively going to be dealing with this parking situation throughout the village. We are, like I said, we are taking this very, very seriously, and we're making sure that the health and safety and that our emergency equipment can get around anywhere throughout the village. So this is going to be the utmost priority in the coming week, and we're going to have a special meeting here just to formalize a couple bylaws that we did tonight. I wanted to also just, I can't tell you, the Public Works Department is just doing such an amazing job. They're revamping a lot of the trails. I drive by the Spirit Park almost on a daily basis, and I see people now having picnics in it and playing. It's really, they're doing an amazing, amazing job, and I just wanted to extend my thank you to them all. I know that it's challenging times and with holidays and that, but they're just keeping up good. I also wanted to just follow up with the speed bumps in the McCulloch subdivision. We got 2 installed, and I know there was a conversation which were greatly received, but about a couple more that may go in. And now that we have Mr. Boyd here, I thought that was a opportune time. And then I just wanted to wish everybody a great summer, and please make sure you're social distancing and taking advantage of this beautiful village that we all live in. So if we could just have a comment about the speed bumps.
Yeah, and in actual fact, I've been in conversation with our operations superintendent, Mr. Fortier, and
Okay.
he had indicated to me that he was going to be ordering some additional speed bumps for that area.
Okay.
So they should be installed. I don't have an exact ETA on delivery, but
Okay.
it is in the works.
Good. Okay. Good. I'll move it on to council reports. Councilor Weber.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about our environment committee meeting. We had sorry. I'm going to keep doing that. Start again. I just wanted to talk about our environment committee meeting we had last Thursday. We had 2 items on the agenda. One was campfires and the consideration of controlling or banning campfires in the village. I'll talk a bit more about that. And the other one was bears. So campfires, one member is fairly concerned about campfires and pollution, and as we the environment becomes a bigger and bigger issue. Should we ban campfires? There was a lot of discussion from members on the Environment Committee. The understanding that every once in a while in a fire season, we have so much smoke here, it's just like 1,000 campfires. But the conclusion we came to is there's some people that are not just having campfires, they're burning all sorts of things. So I think if we were able to control the size of campfires and enforce our bylaw, we would be in better shape. So that was one thing we discussed. One of the questions that came up is how many people are actually fined. I know some of the members of the fire department will, go and investigate the size of campfire rings. So I know they're on it. But I mean, the firemen have enough to do, quite honestly. I don't really want to burden them with more. And then the only ask that they had really from the village is, would we consider doing a survey to see what people think about campfires? I know a lot of people that love their campfires. It's one of the reasons people live in a rural area. So I think I know what the results of the survey would be, but is there any way we could, put that out as on our social media or something like that, or issue a survey? And would council have an appetite for doing something like that?
So certainly at council's direction, we would be able to work to develop a survey that could be distributed to all residents, absolutely. In terms of people burning things that are outside what's allowed within the current regulation and within the campfire permits that are issued, we have been advised by Fire Chief Jay Sharp for any resident who sees or suspects strongly that there's inappropriate burning happening to call 911. And the fire department does then respond, and they ensure that they're, educating and fining where necessary as well. So that would just be a good message for people who feel that that is happening within the village, because certainly if there's an acceptance of campfires generally, then that's different than people burning things that they shouldn't be.
Okay, so that's something we could put out there, maybe remind people that, campfires are campfires. You're not supposed to burn garbage. You're not supposed to. So maybe a bit of an education program. I don't know if we need a resolution for that.
I think we'd be happy to include some information on our resident notification emails, but if it was anything outside of what we're already doing in terms of communication, such as the survey, I'd be seeking direction from council to utilize the resources in that way.
Perhaps when we did our survey for the CC committee around surrounding events, we put the questions together so as not to take away from staff time. We just put everything together and I think just flipped it to you, and maybe Carmen put it in to make, we knew more what we wanted to ask.
Okay. I think this is basically one simple question was what I got from my committee. Are you in favor of regulated campfires or not? So I guess I could put that forth as a resolution for consideration to the chair.
In regards to getting to put it on a survey?
Yeah.
No. I'd certainly defeat some public, but I guess the problem is if you do a survey, what quality of a survey are we going to get? If we get a limited amount of people that put in and they say no campfires, we're not really going to be doing a good publicity thing to really promote what we're asking for. So I think maybe in general, we just to start it off, is maybe we use our Facebook page. We just said there's some concerns from the Environment Committee currently about campfires in the village. What are your thoughts? And that's because it's funny because I remember reading about, what do we like about some of our events, and people are asking actually for 2 fire pits or 3 fire pits because the fire pit during them is always so active. And I know a lot of people up here that actually, have a little fire pit in the back, and it's part of living in a semi-rural atmosphere. So maybe would that be an acceptable?
Well, I think, that certainly would address the first part of our discussion. Yeah. So maybe we could start with that and see if things improve. And then, if it's still a problem, maybe we could bring this back. I'll just keep note of it.
Yeah, let's put it out there that there's been a concern from the Environment Committee regarding the campfires throughout the village.
Yeah, we can certainly make that happen.
Let's hear some comments.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we'd be happy to start with that and see if it improves the situation, and then maybe follow up with a survey if we feel if council has the appetite for it. And then the second thing we discussed was one of our members suggested, and we discussed this before, Julie, if the local conservation officer would consider doing a webinar on not just bear safety, but what their role is as far as controlling animals. I think there was an incident a few months ago where Conservation Office was involved with a baby bear. We talked about this before, and there was a real bad perception, and they got some bad press. I think we would, the Environment Committee would be all over supporting something like that, like an online webinar that people could sign up for or sign into. We could vet questions beforehand. We could, have people, if you're interested in attending this webinar, it's an opportunity to ask questions of the conservation officer. We could provide those questions beforehand so that they were prepared. And I think it would just do a lot to build relationship, and we need a good relationship with our conservation officer, and people shouldn't be afraid to phone them because they think they're going to shoot a bear. I mean, one of the things we discussed, I mean, it's all about conservation. I mean, you're allowed to go shoot a bear if you have a license. They issue so many bear tags. Deer, you can shoot a deer if you have a license. So, one question I would have for them, if you shoot 100 bears in a municipality or all over the province that are interfering with people, is that 100 less hunting licenses that are issued. Thus, the bear count is the same. So those are questions that I think people would like to maybe have answers to.
Through the chair, this information did come out from the Environment Committee, and I think myself and the rest of staff thought it was a fantastic idea. We would see it similar to the recent Blackwell Community Wildfire presentation that we did online. So we would record it. It would be available for people to log in and ask live questions, or like you said, just ask their questions before the presentation, and we would have it then available on our YouTube channel for people to watch at a later date as well. So I did reach out to the conservation officer that is responsible for our area, and he also thinks it's a fantastic idea. So he's gone away and he's going to be looking at resourcing and timing and that sort of thing. And we'll certainly come back to the Environment Committee for some more of that input on what would be helpful information to include once I've heard back from him.
Perfect.
Good.
Okay, that's it.
Any other council reports? I've got Councillor Cryer and then Trowbridge.
I just would like to say thank you, Ms. Halliwell, for forwarding on the email, the resident concern that I sent regarding the fast traffic on Leggett, which apparently there's a turnaround up, or they're using it as a turnaround up top. So there's been a run-in with a car and a house. And the suggestion came from the resident to move the no exit sign closer to Sunnyside. So thank you to Lance for making quick work of that. That was a good thing that came out of a Facebook post. So please pass that along. Thanks.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, just really briefly, just talking about the Parks Committee, we've, and as it relates to a comment that you made relative to the Public Works guys that may be overtaxed and have to back off on the trails. Please don't do that. I would, we've made a lot of headway recently, and Chris Boyd has been extremely helpful, and we've got some things in the work, a little teaser in the work that we're looking at bridge crossings and things like that, hoping that we can get that funded. So I'd like to keep that momentum up, and I would suggest that in order to keep the Public Works guys available to the trail expansions and that sort of stuff, that maybe we look at other areas that we could potentially back off on. I'm thinking, for example, signs. We're getting a lot of feedback that nobody wants an electronic sign. Maybe what we should do is, because it's onerous to manually change that and use that sign, and we as council thought it was being communicative and that we're providing value by having another communication source. And we already took care of light pollution and all that stuff in terms of trying to contact the right experts and so on. But maybe we could back off on changing those signs manually, because that takes man hours. I'd rather see those man hours in the trails than, putting up little notices that we really can't afford to put up. So if things are sort of settled for the summer, maybe we could back off of, and anything else you can think of that I would term non-essential. And trails are not non-essential.
Thank you. Yes, so through the chair, I'm certainly happy to have a look at a different reallocation of resources, and signboards being one of them, if council sort of seems to be generally in agreement on that allocation of our current resourcing.
Well, it may be worthwhile. Like I agree to give it a, maybe just something, put up a generic one, have a great summer, and our hours or whatever and stuff like that, and just leave it. And it may be interesting to see what people do, because I heard from some people that saying that they rely on the signs, and some people that said, I don't even care if they're there anymore. So with the social media, so it may be good just to give it a break and see the feedback that we get. So yeah. Any other? See none? Okay, I'll move it on to the Chief Administrative Officer's report.
Thank you. So I don't have a heck of a lot more that hasn't already been covered through, I think, most of our agenda today. The one thing I do want to say is that we do have the bylaw officer still available to us from Belcara for the Thursday night Friday Bear Aware education program. So she has been out for the last couple of weeks. We're needing to order more violation stickers for people's garbage cans, so obviously she's been running into a number of instances where people aren't adhering to the bylaw. So we're hopeful that as the weeks go by, those numbers will dwindle, and we'll see more compliance and less carts out when they shouldn't be.
Good, good. Well, thank you very much. That's good. That's a good news story. You know, we've had a lot of complaints about garbage getting out early. Okay, we have some general correspondence. Metro Vancouver Board and Brief for a meeting held on July 3rd. 2020. I'll now open up to public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions of council regarding any item pertaining to village business. 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. If you could come on up and please state your name and address.
2 minutes in total, or 2 minutes per question?
2 minutes in total.
In total. Oh dear.
We will be a little bit liberal.
We'll be liberal. Okay. Related to the survey, you know, I appreciate all that was done related to the survey, and I would like to just suggest to council that you not take the inappropriate comments to heart. It's part of human nature that we pay more attention to negative things than positive things in terms of human survival of the species, but it's not a psychologically healthy thing to do to focus on the negative. And so I would think not, that would be my advice as a psychologist to council, to just not worry too much about the inappropriate comments and try to focus instead on the helpful comments. But related to the survey, Constable Trowbridge, I was concerned, and the other Kim who's now gone, that you seem to think that you could draw conclusions from the open-ended questions in the very last section, which you can't do. Like, you can't say because X% of people in that section mention size, that those are the only, those represent opinions. Do you know what I mean? Like, for the open-ended questions, because there's no structure. You can't say because only a small number of people addressed one topic, that there's only a small number of people who care about that topic, which you and the other Kim seem to be concluding, which you can't do from an open-ended question in a survey. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I don't think it was my conclusion. I asked Kim the question and she answered it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there seemed to be a conclusion drawn, well then only a small % of people have that concern. Okay, and I don't know how many members of council follow Anmore Conversation. I know, John, you must do because...
I don't follow it, to be honest.
But occasionally you reply.
Yeah,
I've seen
on
recent
occasion, yeah.
replies.
I'm not a social media guy, though. I'm sorry.
Okay, but what I wanted to mention, so council may not be unaware, but there was recently this fairly extensive conversation thread about the problem in Anmore of our having no provision for animal control. At one time, years ago, we had a contract with the SPCA, and then at some point a council decided to not renew that contract, but nor did we establish a contract like with the Coquitlam Shelter or Port Coquitlam or anywhere else. So I know this, we've been involved in this also when lost animals, wind up at our house. And because we have no animal control contract, and it's a problem, for what to do with these animals. And it's also a problem for the village staff because people come here and drop off lost animals, but ultimately everyone has to go home. Somewhat off the record, actually, once when we had a lost dog at our house, and I was in communication with one of the staff, our village staff, I was advised actually to just call Coquitlam Animal Control and lie and say that the animal was found in Port Moody. Because it was getting late in the day, no owner had been found. And it's, in terms of the amount of money that we spend on all sorts of things, it's very odd to me given that we're a fairly animal-friendly community. And I've mentioned this numerous times at previous council meetings, and my concern never goes anywhere in terms of why we're not doing some sort of animal control contract so that a lost animal could be sheltered.
And Nancy, that's gone on for well over 10 years, and it's cost prohibitive. The cost was, do you remember what the cost was? It was unbelievable what Coquitlam was wanting us to pay. Yeah, about $15,000 a year.
For Coquitlam.
Yes.
Oh, perhaps that sum could be negotiated. Yes.
That's the problem. It wasn't, and this went on when I remember when Heather was mayor as well, and she was the one that actually suggested when people asked a similar question. Former Mayor Anderson actually said, "Just please take the dog or animal down there, but don't say that you had it up in Anmore." So.
And that's actually a very poor thing to do in terms
I
of
couldn't.
the
I was shocked when she said
line-
it. Yeah.
line and trying to help an animal be returned to its owners, because then they have the wrong information. How about Port Coquitlam? How much was the Port Coquitlam?
I don't know.
service?
We always dealt with the Coquitlam shelter. Yeah. Yeah. So.
But it is a problem, and even in the last couple of weeks, people have wound up with several lost cats, and there's nowhere to take them. That's legal, save for housing them yourself. And Polly, one other quick comment here. Related to this letter from the chair of our school board, Carrie Palmer Isaac. I certainly appreciate and share your concern for mental health services to youth, in this area. And I guess I could contact Carrie myself, but I was a little concerned that the school board had not addressed this letter to the group in the Tri-Cities who is responsible for child and youth mental health services, which is through MCFD. Child and youth mental health falls under MCFD, not Fraser Health. And also, Carrie Palmer Isaac didn't seem to be aware of, there actually does exist a funded after-hours program through MCFD that was established in the 90s and covers not just our area, but also Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, and it's the Youth Crisis Response Service that operates out of an office, I believe, down in Newport is where they're currently located. And it is after hours, and anyway, and it's mental health staff who go out weekends, evenings, into the community to deal with mental health crisis emergencies. So rather than establish a different service, it might be best for them to work with the existing service in terms of augmenting it. I was surprised there was no mention of the service that does exist in that letter.
Right. I think what the point that she was trying to make, and I do know of the service that you're referring to, and then there is also Access Youth that does go out with the bus.
Oh, Jerome Bouvier's program, yes.
No longer Jerome. He's been gone for years, yeah. So yes, there are several other similar programs. I think what they're trying to do at this point in time through the foundation, they're looking for things to focus on. And I'm always surprised in the Tri-Cities, there are a lot of people doing the same thing. There are a lot of redundant services. So I think at this point in time, I don't know how they came to the choice of mental health for youth, and I know that there will be other things. So I don't think that they were meaning, it sounds to me, and I don't know that much about it, this is the first I've heard about this program through the letter. This is a little bit different of a program in sending out a car and getting, as it relates to RCMP and someone in uniform as well as a peer worker working together. But your point is valid, and it's certainly something I can bring up to Carrie in a conversation that we have.
Oh, I'd appreciate that, because
Sure.
coordination is always more effective than, sort of like duplication
Yeah.
and redundancy in services. and creating another service that's operating not in collaboration with the existing programs.
And obviously, the school district works in a complete different manner than MCFD. So I don't know if they would have they're dealing specifically with people that are already in the school system, so they may have access to someone that maybe doesn't have access to MCFD. And in situations like this, it's oftentimes being in the right place at the right time to help someone who's in crisis right away. If they have that relationship with someone during school hours that could carry on after school hours, it might be the way to be there at just the right time to help someone. But it's a valid point, and I'll certainly
I've not
mention
been
it.
perfectly, personally involved for years, but the way youth crisis response used to work was it was an open service, like you didn't have to go through like a professional because it was after hours. So it was not one of these restricted services. It was just a phone call away.
And I think those are all details that I am certainly not in the loop on. And so Carrie would be the person to speak with about that, and I'll talk to her for you.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. And then
Yeah, if you could let me know. Okay, thank you.
Karen, you had an email question?
Thank you. Yes, I do have an email question in from Ray Hewell, and his question is regarding, as one of the original Community Pathway Project volunteers, he's expressing disappointment with the condition of many sections of the pathways, and specifically outlines a dangerous section between 2380 East Road and the fire hall, and just would like to encourage mayor and council to go for a walk along that area on what he describes as a route-ridden, elevated and dangerous section. He says that he's a frequent user of pathways and trails around Anmore, and hope that the tax increases that we have had to pay and the surplus that we have now, that this is a service we should expect to have completed by now. And also indicating that Public Works request that property owners cut back hedges and bushes along the way so that they can walk side by side instead of single file in the majority of the areas. And I do believe that Mr. Boyd may have a comment, or Mayor McEwen, regarding the specific section being included in the capital works projects.
I don't, but I think that he's going to be he should be quite satisfied after what we awarded tonight, and I think it'll definitely remedy any of the concerns that he had.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure exactly that address is.
Yeah.
You said somewhere close to the fire hall.
Yes,
Yes.
along East Road to the fire hall.
Yeah, so that piece has been upgraded this year, so
Yeah.
you should be satisfied they'd be able to
Yeah.
walk side by side.
Yeah, so if you could respond and just simply say that work, and maybe even a copy of the map has all been approved and will be executed in the coming weeks.
Yes, I will make sure to do
Good.
that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Greg Winterbottom, Sunnyside Road. I just confused by why the village is making the application to change the status of the special study area, the zoning, when the owner isn't asking for it at this point.
So we made, I guess it would have been 14 years ago, we made application to make it a special study area. The village did, under Mayor Weinberg, and it got voted on and approved. All we're doing now is just to follow through with that special study area, and possibly hear what the community has to say in regards to options. It doesn't define anything. We could keep it just exactly the same as it is.
So
We're worried that the special study areas may become a thing of the past if they are removed when Metro Vancouver does its 2050 plan.
So removing it then does what? Just leaves it the way it
It would put it back to rural.
Rural RS1?
Yeah.
which yeah, I don't see the problem with that until the owner is asked. Are we giving up? Like usually, the owner of the property is making an application, and then to get it changed, and then there's a concession or something to get
No,
that changed.
that's a rezoning. That's all, that's completely different. All this is from Metro Vancouver's perspective of what possibly could go there. And you know, as I've said repeatedly, Mayor Weinberg had talked about a high-tech center. Well, we could never even think about putting that there under the rural setting. So that's why this opens it up. As well as there's a huge environmental aspect to it that could facilitate cluster housing, which we can't do right now under the RS1.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Councillor Trowbridge.
If I may, I believe, and I would have to get staff to check into it, but I believe it always, in terms of a designation change, it's always by the community, not by the applicant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought that if they're not wanting the change, then that they should be the driving force behind it. But anyway, this is to our advantage.
It really doesn't have any bearing. It just gives options down the road to what you could put there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
but this will follow through to change the to
There-
urban.
Well, there would be an extensive
Yeah.
public engagement and educating what it is that this is all about. But this is not a rezoning. When a rezoning, that's when the village benefits through different CACs and that. This has nothing to do with that. This is only in Metro's eye. Paul?
So for
Or-
clarity, it's still zoned RS1.
Yes.
Yeah, we still would have to go through a whole public process to change anything, just like we would do anything up here. It's just the options of what an applicant could ask for, or what we could ask the applicant for, is greater under Metro Vancouver. We're just removing that sort of barrier, but it doesn't change what it's actually zoned now.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? And that probably will happen, you know, we'll start public engagement, I would say, probably late September, October. It'll be a long process to do that. It's similar to a bit of an OCP revision and that. So, anything else? Okay, well then I'm going to move to conclude. Move seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. Have a good summer. Thank you for coming out tonight.